Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Dying Time is here. That's right, we're talking A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors on Kill by Kill. Well, greetings and salutations, Internet. It's your old pal, Patrick Hamilton, coming to you once again from the popsicle version of 1428 Elm Street. This is the Kill by Kill podcast, where we are dedicated to celebrating the least discussed component of any horror film, the characters. Now, we're going to unpack all the gory details of Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors in the hopes that a unfortunate mental ward patient's death is just the beginning of the jokes that we can make at their expense. And as always, there is only one person that I trust that when I need to know how to stop a serial killer sleep demon, she gets straight to the fucking point already. The one, the only, Gina Radcliffe. How are you doing, Gina?
I'm back from the warp I disappeared into the halfway through our last episode. I've just been killing time. I emerged the same age, and everybody around me is 50 years older. So that's been a little hard to process, but you know how it be sometimes.
Yeah, that sort of thing is going around from what I hear. But I'm so glad to have you back, even if you are in some sort of withered, desiccated state.
I've never looked better, honestly.
Oh, there you go. Well, it'll do things for you. That's good to know. But Gina, I don't want to alarm you right now, but we are not alone. That's right. We have a very special guest. You may have read his stuff on dailydead.com or Rude Morgue, or you may have heard him on the Corpse Club podcast. He is the one, the only Bryan Christopher. How you doing, Bryan?
I am doing well. How are you doing, Patrick?
I'm excellent. I'm so glad that you are here. It's been a long time coming. You've been a faithful voice in the Twitterverse of our show. You've helped carry our name far and wide, and we greatly appreciate it.
I think that's a very what's the word I'm looking for? Diplomatic way of saying I essentially invited myself onto this podcast. So I do appreciate you having me on, Gina as well. I'm looking forward to talking Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
Well, it's not like you aren't an authority on the subject. You are a man who writes about horror in various ways and forms. What was your first introduction to the Nightmare on Elm Street series?
It's one of those series that is so ingrained in my consciousness that it's hard to, I couldn't tell you the exact moment, but I do have to think it's this one. It's Dream Warriors, just because those are the earliest memories I have of the Nightmare series. So, I other people talk about, they remember the slumber party or the first time they got it because they snuck it in when their parents weren't home. My mom was so into horror movies that it replaced bedtime stories for me. So take of that what you will. But I think of this series, this was one of the ones that is the earliest memory for me.
It does seem to resonate with a lot of people, I think, because it focuses on the most vulnerable of all the teens that we've met so far. People can see themselves. It's rather empowering. I've certainly picked up that vibe from a lot of people that I've asked why Dream Warriors is their jam. But that being said, did it hold up for you on this particular viewing?
It did, in a way that it actually came up from the last time I watched it, where probably about last year, for whatever reason I put it on, for whatever reason, it just didn't do it for me. Mm-hmm. But watching it again this time around, I remembered a lot of what I loved about it. I think the one thing that I remember not loving about it last time or this time is the soundtrack really isn't as good, anywhere nearly as good as the original one was.
That is an understatement. We discussed this on the last episode, but Angelo Badalamente's score here is basically first draft. It sounds like he's plinking along on a Casio as the film plays, and they're like, "Do you want a second take?" He's like, "I'm good." It's not his finest hour.
Yeah, this is like it's the one where it's like, this is the working title or the working draft. We'll get the timing down and then we'll put something in, and then they just forgot to come back around to it.
Well, I asked you a question that I'd asked our previous guest and Gina as well, before you entered into it, and this was before our last episode, launched. So I'm hoping that you didn't crib the answer. But previous to your watch, I asked, who do you think is the protagonist of this particular film? And you responded with Kristen. And so upon this rewatch, did that prognostication still hold true?
I have no idea, to be perfectly honest. It could be Kristen, it could be Nancy, it could be Neil. I know you don't like the idea of, the unflavored bowl of oatmeal being the lead character in the movie, but the movie spends equal time with quite a few people and gives them scenes where they're by themselves. And I would make an argument, and it might be a little off kilter, but this is almost a really good ensemble movie.
I think that's what we're coming down to, is that it might be an ensemble movie. And what my main problem is, besides the lump of clay given a haircut called Craig Wasson's presence in the film, is that his character gets to be the one who discovers everything, and everything has to pass his metric of believability. And that's where I feel like this could have been worked out better.
Yeah, it's like they needed him to explain to the audience what's going on when the audience should already know what's going on, because I don't know. Well, I guess a fair amount of people came into the movie not having seen even the first one, but I would think that you would have a general idea that okay, this isn't something they're just imagining, but it's sort of like he is Dr. Expository. They just need he exists solely to have everything explained to him to catch up the audience who may not be familiar with the storyline already.
And I just disagree with him being the person who gets the backstory, who receives all the ghostly information, and he tends not to do a whole hell of a lot with it. And that's my big gripe, that if he's going to participate along this level, I feel like this would have been better if he were a constant doubting Thomas, and Nancy would have had to remain out, it would have been kicked out of the dream, the place where she was a somewhat expert in it. And she would have had to fight Freddy in the real world as a rematch of the first film. And Kristen, now taking center stage in the dream world as the leader of that group, would then have to make the decisions inside of the dream world to fight Freddy. And it could have been a two-hander. And this guy could have sat off to the side.
He would have been at he would have been his single dad encounter meeting or something.
Yeah, I mean, there could have been better uses for it. I just don't feel like he's the one who should get the denouement at the end of this, and Nancy bites it in a dream. I feel like it's a more resounding finish. Like, this is a solid triple for me that would have been an unquestionable home run if it had structured that story a little bit better. But we have to deal with the film that we have, not the film that we want. That's right, Internet. I'm not starting a petition.
We're stuck with the Tweed Wonder, his royal dullness.
Oh my God, he's barely functioning. I mean, he's breathing because I can see his chest move, and he talks. But let's get into it then. Before we go any further, we have to discuss it. Who is still left alive at this point in the movie? And the answer is almost everyone, except for Philip and Freddy and Ghost Nun. I guess there's a fair amount of people who are dead, and two of them are still walking around. Anyways, let's go through them one by one. First, we have Kristen, a character without a waist, as we only see her in two outfits, a pajama tunic and grandpa pants. I assume she has a pelvis, but I don't need to see direct evidence of this, but I would like a defined waist for her. I feel she deserves it. Next, we have Nancy, our returning champion. She's a dame like any other, except for her hair, waves like the ocean, and a siren call from the sea. Then we have Will, or as I like to refer to him, Weenie Prime. Then there's Jennifer, a deluded person who acts so out of touch with reality that she may be a secret cartoon like the judge from Roger Rabbit. Spoiler alert for Roger Rabbit.
It's only been 35 years.
That's right. Well, it's a spoiler culture. Anyways, we also have Joey, better known as the teardrop babyface killer. And then there's Taryn. She's beautiful and bad and breaking when she says that line. We can give her like 2 takes, maybe even 3. We don't have to take the first one where the ridiculousness of that line makes her crack up in the middle of saying it. This is not the Carol Burnett show. Also, we have Kincaid, and I learned a little tidbit from Amazon, as I am wont to do, that when the actor who portrayed this role went into audition, it pretty much came down to him walking into the room and yelling, "Fuck you, motherfucker!" And he was cast right there.
And that's Ken Sago's Patrick. Credit where credit is due.
Yes, and he does an excellent job here. He gets short shrift in the next film, but we'll save that for that film. We also have Dr. Sims. She's a medical professional who believes a collective dream about a child killer is actually masking the guilt of jerking off. And I don't think she understands how dreams or jerking off works.
I need to read her grad school paper on this, because that's a puzzling correlation.
We're in a safe space here that is going to go out to all your listeners. I've done my fair share of masturbating, and I've done my fair share. I know. I hope you were sitting down. And like any good true-blooded American, I've done my fair share of feeling bad about it afterwards, but never did that manifest itself as a dream so terrible that I died in the middle of it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, like, aren't they like kind of repressed sexuality dreams, like hot dogs chasing donuts through tunnels and stuff like that, or oil derricks exploding, someone putting a basketball through a hoop. Yeah, basically everything that happened during the love scene in The Naked Gun.
Yes, that is the only sex metaphor that I will accept. Anything that can be explained by cueing back to a silent movie where a guy falls through multiple window awnings. That's how I view sex, because I'm a red-blooded American. And then, of course, we have to round it out with Craig. My face just does this. Wasson. As Dr. Neil fucking something or other. We just refer to him as Craig Wasson. I, once again, would like to apologize to Mr. Wasson. I'm sure he is a nice man who's done many good things. This does not happen to be one of them, and I get to talk about it. Sorry, dude.
He's gotten his PhD in bland and his minor in boring.
Oh boy, he does not light up the screen. In fact, it's a miracle that light refracts off of him at all to be captured on a 24 frames per minute image to give the illusion of movement. And yet here we are. And so let us re-enter the action inside the group therapy room, where it must have also housed Cheech and Chong, because it is smoky as fuck in there, y'all.
Oh yeah, everybody's smoking. Like the staff is smoking. In the scene right before Jennifer is killed, she just finds a pack of matches just laying on the ground in the psychiatric hospital.
Well, I'm pretty sure the one orderly is Andrew Dice Clay's stunt double, so I think he has to smoke a lot just in his contract.
Yes, he does a lot with a little, and by a little, I mean the smoke that keeps traversing between his mouth and his nose. He learned this trick. Motherfucker, I'm going to show you this trick on camera.
That's how he got his, that's how he won his audition.
That's right.
And then they said, I could incorporate a few other things. Nope, smoke trick, that's it.
No, that's your character. Smoky trick, McSmoke trick. That's you, dude. So Dr. Sims, in her wisdom, chalks Philip's death in the previous episode up to a, quote, sleepwalking accident, but that kind of negates the fact that he walked right out of her locked ward. No one in the upper echelons here seems to take the least a bit of onus or responsibility for letting a dude you knew walked around sleepwalking and let him walk straight the fuck through a door.
Well,
He walked through a door, y'all.
Well, as we know, the policing skills in the area are not very efficient. So I'm pretty sure that they don't worry much about how they're explaining how these kids are getting killed. Because I actually did note that about Jennifer's death, in that her parents are going to ask questions. How are they going to explain that?
She's spry.
I don't know.
Or she was.
Was she fucking Michael Jordan? Did she take a 1, 2, 3 step and just sail across the screen?
Launched herself out of
Space Jam into that fucking television set?
Launched herself out of a t-shirt cannon.
I mean, did she have an explosive fart? There's a lot of ways to explain her face being buried in a television set, but we never hear any of those explanations. And they're all like, oh, well, what are you going to do? It must be the therapy. That is not an explanation for this. That's not something someone can do on their own, y'all.
I would have loved to have seen them do a Mythbusters on that. Not to see that it could actually be done, because it can't, but just to see them like get exasperated at all the different ways they'd need to try and put someone's body through a TV and fail spectacularly at it.
But we will get into that more when it occurs. But right now, we're still in the middle of our, group therapy session, and we all need to quiet down, because into the room walks human toothpaste tube wearing a sports coat named Craig Wasson. And he decides that awareness of Philip, that when someone says, no, I saw his eyes, he was awake when this happened. He's like, that means he gave up. He gave up on all of us. He might be a shitty psychologist.
Yeah,
I was thinking the same thing.
That's not the time to bring out the tough love.
Yeah,
no, not when everyone's fucking fragile.
Even if this whole Freddy Krueger thing was a complete crock of shit, you don't tell a group of suicidal teenagers that the kid who just committed suicide was cowardly and just quit on the whole group.
I was going to say, you don't say he basically didn't give a shit about you.
He crumpled up his friendship with you and pissed on it, and then took a flying leap off of a tower while all of you watched. And I don't believe any of your perceptions, even though you all witnessed it together.
If he could have been giving you the finger on his way down, he would have.
If only his tendons weren't so messed up for some reason that I really can't explain.
We just don't know how there was a sleepwalking accident that caused all the tendons in his arms to come out of his body.
This is like Hot Fuzz levels of denial.
And yeah, at least Hot Fuzz has the tenacity to give me an explanation for all those fucking deaths. And here, not so much. It's because they masturbated too hard that Philip decided to take a long walk off a short bell tower. And I know that we talked a bit about this on the previous episode, but I know that Bryan, you had a little bit more to say to eulogize the much missed Philip from this movie.
Yeah, and part of it might just be a little bit of nostalgia, because I also know him as Eyeball Chambers from Stand By Me. But I just feel like Philip was one of the few characters who had a level of self-awareness and maturity that even for a series as great as Nightmare on Elm Street, no one else seems to have. So he's the one who brings up, we're making maximum effort with minimal progress. Like he gets how none of this adds up. Like he's actually a stand-in for the audience. And it's just a shame that they had a really interesting character there. I just wish they hadn't killed him off first.
Yeah, I think that's the danger with this type of movie. And we've seen it before in other franchises and other films. You have this standout character, And you want, I would assume the filmmakers of all stripes would want every character to be a standout. And there's quite a few in here. But Philip is kind of eliminated because he's a bit too smart. And I think that's a cop-out. It's nice when you can still have somebody stay in tune with the audience's questions throughout a movie. I know that eventually he'll be dispatched. He's probably not the final girl, as it were. But that doesn't mean that you need to eliminate him so that fucking Joey can stick around. For Christ's sakes, Joey lives through this movie. Teardrop killer, Joey.
Well, I'll do you one better, because I have a question for Patrick and Gina. If Patricia Arquette was not cast as Kristen, is Kristen at all a memorable character in this series?
And she screams like the Dickens.
Whether or not her I don't know that she has a character beyond Patricia Arquette occupying the space denoted for Kristen. She obviously has movie star charisma, and that's why we know her. That's why we notice Larry Fishburne, who's condemned to walk around and, occasionally lamenting hippies when he should be in Craig Wasson's role, because they have movie star charisma. Yeah, she's probably not standout material on the page. But then again, that's why you go out and you try to cast the best actor that you can, because they inhibit it and they give everything a glow up.
Yeah, and that was something that I noticed, I think, in the last one that kind of bumped this one down for me a little bit. And again, it's since come back up. But of the three kind of big characters of this series, Nancy, Kristen, and Alice, I honestly think that if not for Patricia Arquette, Kristen is the least interesting, like you said, on the page. Like, Nancy gets a great arc over 2 movies. Alice gets a great arc, at the very least, over 4. I haven't seen 5 in such a long time that I really can't speak intelligently to that, other than knowing that other people have said it's not great.
Yeah.
But Kristen is just, in this one, she's more of a plot device. She's the one who brings everybody into the dreams. But beyond that, it's just kind of what Patricia Arquette brings to it. And it kind of goes back to being Nancy's movie.
Yeah. But then again, I think we're caught in a vicious cycle here, because if it's truly an ensemble film, then you do the best with the space that you're given. And once again, I think that's where Patricia Arquette shines, as opposed to some of the other people who will not be named. Craig Wasson. Anyways, not to bang this drum again as we move on just a little bit, but this is where the movie has a plot versus character problem, because it relies on Craig Wasson to be this tipping point for everything. And Nancy never gets to really push, defend, or campaign for her dream theories. It's just something that everyone ignores, even though it was brought up. It's a conveyance for her to be in the film, but she never, outside of within the small group, like, she never defends herself to Dr. Sims. She never gets to defend herself against the head administrator, whoever the fuck that guy is. I don't understand why everyone, as soon as she's brought in as the chain dream expert, and she goes, it might be chain dreams. They're like, fuck you, fuck dreams, fuck nightmares. This whole thing needs to be shut down. It's like they were waiting for an excuse, and they're making her that, but they never say it out loud. And I just wish they would pull that thread through. It's just one thing that I wish was there.
And it does seem like it is going with the themes of Nightmare on Elm Street, of the kids versus the adults. And I think that they had to, they seem to have just automatically put her in that role of, like, she's not one of the kids, but now she is kind of one of the kids, because no one believes her for the exact thing that she was brought in to be believed about.
Right. It's a bit of a Ripley from Aliens, where Ripley is brought on because she's the one person who has expertise with the xenomorph, and she tells everybody, if you send people to that planet. They're going to find this fucking thing and it's going to eat them and it's going to take over the universe. And like, pat on the shoulder, you go load some things in that loader. And then when they get to that planet, she's like, hey, everybody, these aliens are terrible. They have acid for blood. And they're like, oh, okay, I carry a gun. And then aliens rip through every fucking person in the movie. And I think there's a bit of, well, they're walking the same sort of tightrope, I suppose, because they basically came out at the same time.
Yeah. It's definitely, why bring that person in if you're just going to then shit all over every idea they have. But I think it goes back to the idea, like you said, it's more of a moving the plot and the themes along as opposed to something that necessarily makes sense kind of in a literal fashion in that situation.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess because of part 2, they felt that, in case you missed it or in case you've forgotten, we're just going to reestablish the entire plot again.
I think that has a lot to do with it. I also felt like they were trying to right the ship for whatever reason. They're like, no. This thing has more to do with dreams. Like, let's get back into the dream thing. Which I understand. Also, I learned during the sequence that it has been 6 years since her last encounter with Freddy. So that would put her around 24, 25, depending on how old she was in the original movie.
I think she was 16. So I think she's only like 22 here.
Oh, good Lord.
Just her she's kind of got a little bit of the middle-aged mom aesthetic going on.
Yeah. Well, they're trying to age her up, I suppose.
When you got that weight streak, you got to use it.
Fatale.
When you got that weight streak, you got to use it. You got to incorporate. She's basically building a whole wardrobe around the middle age indication from the weight streak.
And so when things break down, once Kincaid basically tells everyone, "Fuck off, I'm not going to sleep, y'all," and he keeps that promise. Spoiler alert. Sims basically shuts down group for the day and walks out and says, "This is crazy. Y'all are crazy." And then in a fit of pique, Craig Wasson decides this is the best moment to tell his superior officer, as it were, "Oh, I'm going to prescribe this drug this dream inhibiting drug to all of these mental patients." And she's like, "The fuck you are?" And he's like, "Well, if you don't do this, I'm going to quit." And she's like, "Okay, buddy, it's on you." Once again, she never takes responsibility for shit.
Can I just say that I wish there was a real medication other than heavily drinking that made it so you did not have any dreams. God, yeah. I would be a tremendously happier, better rested person if such a medication actually existed. Give me Hypnosil. Get to work on that Pfizer. I will give you money.
There's a bit of wiki time wombly jombly going on here because he basically denotes, "I'm going to do this." Nancy says, "Do you think we can get it?" And he goes, "I hope so." And then we cut to later that night and we have no idea whether or not anyone has received Hypnosil. I have to assume they haven't, or maybe they have. I don't know. No, they haven't, because Jennifer is definitely dreaming. So it's either not working or they didn't get it in time. So there's that. Let's queue up a bunch of potential victims here. We've got Kincaid in the quiet room singing to himself. We've got Jennifer alone in the TV lounge wearing some kind of patriotic house coat. That is an odd outfit.
Also, this is one of those moments where I do have to ask, are they the only patients in the entire hospital?
Well, I would assume because they are minors that the ward may be very well locked down from interaction from other wards.
But there's no other, like, it's just them on the ward? Like, there's the 5 of them? 6 of them? However many there are?
Oh, well, this was mental health care under Reagan. I mean, it was glorious. Everyone had a room unto themselves when it came to Ronald Reagan's America and mental health.
Plus, by this point, hasn't Freddy killed like pretty much every kid in the town before the Springwood PD really caught wind of what was going on anyway?
I don't know if this film makes that point or if that is left for other movies. When it comes to the lore, I don't think this is one is necessarily set up as you're the last of the Elm Street kids.
They she does say that.
She does?
She says that exact thing to them. Yeah.
Holy shit. How many last kids of Elm Street are there?
When Nancy, I think it's after Jennifer is killed, when when Nancy says, "Oh, I know who it is," and she tells him, and then she goes, "No, you're the last of the Elm Street children." No, she definitely says that in this.
Speaking of which, God. I'm gonna hit Gina's button here and just point out the fact that once again they're going to the legend of 6 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing of legend. Many people haven't heard about this serial murderer who killed 20 plus children.
I think that
on A Street.
Yeah, A Street. And every parent on that street took part in this mass murder of this child killer. And then, like some sort of HBO series, promised that they would never, ever, ever tell their children about it. Why? I'm not sure. I mean, if you got to be like 17 or 18 and, your dad sits you down one day and says, "Son, I need to tell you, when you were a little boy, there was a bad man going around murdering children. And your mom and I and a bunch of people got together and killed him." I mean, you probably wouldn't believe him. Think about your father for a second. You're like, "Yeah, I think that's bullshit, Dad." But at the same time, wouldn't you be like, "That's kind of cool that my parents would be all Dirty Harry on this child killer, and instead it's just like this horrifying secret that we killed the child murderer who got off on a technicality." And I mean, what would be worse, that or, we just sort of, kept going about our day, didn't move our children out of the town or anything.
No, I mean, win some, lose some in the court system. I think that's the mantra there. And I'm sure everything will work out for the best with this almost self-admitted child murderer who every ounce of evidence was tossed out of court in one fell swoop because no evidence was ever located outside of that boiler room. It's a metaphor. It's just a movie, everyone.
But yeah, if you're gonna play that tightrope of who's the real monster, maybe don't use the dozen or so kid child killer as the kind of the crux of that. This is kind of a clear-cut thing where it's like, what? Maybe what they did probably wasn't all that bad considering.
It would have been interesting. And spoiler, because I don't know dick about Ma, but I'm secretly hoping that the plot behind Ma is that the kids' parents all did something to her in high school. And her revenge is once she realizes that all these kids come from the parents who tormented her in high school and did something terrible, that she then takes her revenge, because that would be awesome. And I would love to see that movie.
They strongly hint at that in the trailers. There's some kind of history with her and the parents.
Because you get that whole meeting of one of the parents going, "I don't want you near my kids," and all that shit. But that could also be, that could be headcanon that I'm projecting onto it. And if the movie doesn't deliver that, will I be disappointed? Slightly, because I think it's a missed opportunity. But then again, what they have recorded might be infinitely better. I do not know. So there's my talk about a movie that does not come out for several weeks.
Another potential petition.
Yes. Oh, I've got a petition ready. Let's get that out there. The best use of your time is petitioning people about art you don't like. But is it me that's wrong? No, it's the children. The children. They're
Am I the one who's out of touch?
No. So we also find Jennifer in the TV room, and she is falling asleep watching Critters, and I kind of don't blame her. I'm not a Critters guy. It's fine if you are. I'm just not a Critters person. Are either of you Critters fans?
I'm indifferent. I remember seeing it as a kid, but I've never felt the need to go back.
Exactly. I have a vague recollection of watching it. It's not something that, I wonder if Critters holds up.
It's not, it just, okay. I mean, hey, listen, everyone's got their something. I'm sure somebody watches what I watch and it's like, fuck, this is ridiculous. But, that's the beauty of having a buffet. Just because I like shrimp and you go for the crab legs, we're not either worse for wear. We just both should not be eating seafood from a buffet. The more you know, Starfield. Okay.
Or you could go for the one that fell on the floor in the form of munchies.
Oh my God. I really want to hunt down Spookies. Spookies looks like the one that has the coolest creature effects, but I can't find it anymore. And I am fascinated by that VHS cover, probably for rather obvious and telling reasons. But I digress. Let's talk about other old 80s horror movies that only I and Gina have seen. We get a brief clip of Alone in the Dark and a nut chop sequence that I love from the beginning of that movie.
Is that the Jack Palance Alone in the Dark?
Yes, it is.
You betcha.
Okay. I missed that one. I missed that being in Nightmare 3, but I've seen that movie and it is that one's a doozy.
Oh, it is something to behold.
I think that one's been on our we're going to get to it at some point list for a while.
Yeah, it would be nice if everyone can see it. It does come on Turner Classic Movies every once in a while. If you're seeking it out, I would definitely look around Turner Classic Movies because I think they play it 2, maybe 3 times a year in that Friday or Saturday late night spot. It showed up on Shudder for a hot second and then instantly disappeared. So I don't know what's happening with the rights and New Line or Warner Brothers or whatever the fuck.
I may have caught it on Amazon Prime. I forget what. It was one of the streaming platforms. I forget if I caught it during that brief Shudder window or if it was when it was on Prime for a little while.
Yeah, it showed up in both places. I keep fearing that the same thing will happen to Hello, Mary Lou Prom Night too. But so far, so good.
If nothing else, you need to see a continually high and delusional Donald Pleasance.
Yeah, smoking up right in front of the crazy guy from the A-Team. The person who is supposedly in charge of all these mental patients. I love that scene where Jack Palance says goodbye for 5 minutes, where he just stands in front of a room. Is like, is the camera running? Great. You could go someplace. I'm just going to say goodbye. Happy. Wait for it. Wait for it. Trails.
Pick up the gun. You said that already, Jack. That's a different movie. Sit down. Just go sit down.
Have I told you about my one-armed push-ups? Jack Palance, everyone. That's my Jack Palance impersonation. It's not great, and there are better, but that's the one I have. It's the one God gave me. And so from Alone in the Dark, the television set gets turned to a Dick Cavett hosted TV show with Zsa Zsa Gabor, whose claimed fame was her sister was on Green Acres, pretty much.
Well, do you remember from the Never Sleep Again documentary why they went with Zsa Zsa Gabor?
She replaced Sally Kellerman, if I remember correctly.
Well, according to Never Sleep Again, Dick Cavett specifically chose her because he hated her so much and thought she was so vapid and just uninteresting. He wanted her to die in the movie.
Oh, I want that to be absolutely 100% true. What a wonderful tale.
I want that Dick Cavett rumor to be at least as true as the rumor that he and Janis Joplin dated. I want both of these things to be true.
Man, learning all kinds of shit about Dick Cavett tonight.
Oh, man. The dude is wild.
God bless, he's still alive.
Yes. No, yes. It's still kicking. Still out there on the circuit.
What is he, like 150?
Could be. But he's outlived us all and probably will because he's part robot. You don't know that It's just part of the lore of being Dick Cavett, the guy who fucked his way through the 60s and 70s. Surprisingly. This would have been interesting to have Sally Kellerman. You might have known her from, of course, the original MASH and Meatballs 2, where she plays an imaginary porn star. I don't remember every detail of Meatballs 2.
I believe, Patrick, she is the ghost of a porn star. Thank you very much.
Ow! My apologies. That is so very different.
You really, really owe our audiences something better with your lack of knowledge of the Meatballs verse.
I've actually got a soft spot for
the original MCU, the Meatballs cinematic universe.
I've got a soft spot for from Back to School, which I can't connect back to the Meatballs universe, but is a good movie all by itself.
Yes, I just picture her as like the ultimate kind of sketchy single mom in Foxes.
That's very true.
The kind of woman who like brings home her boyfriends and like expects her kids to call him uncle.
There's one element of this particular scene that I did not notice until this particular rewatch, and that is that the TV set is actually a bit of a facade. The actual casing around it is built up to be larger and sort of look trashier when there's a very modern, for the times, tube TV set that's somewhat smaller inside of it. And you really get a very good look at it when the camera dollies in while she's trying to change channels. You can see that the TV part is actually smaller than where the speakers are. And I am paying too much fucking attention to these movies.
Well, I mean, if you're going to have Robert Englund have to like curl up in a ball in there waiting to pop out of it, you got to have it be a little bit bigger.
This is very, very true. I think they were trying to make it look not as modern, but they probably still needed a newer television to, at the time you had to time out the dot matrix of it all so that it didn't have a black bar constantly dropping throughout it. Hey, that's what you had to do before digital broadcasting. You're welcome, everyone, for just terribly boring information. You may refer to my supervisor, Craig Wasson, who told me to talk about it.
You know what the worst part is? Like, I actually have never minded Craig Wasson's performance in this movie, but I also love a good pile-on. So, yeah, he's a flavorless, ice-flavored popsicle. So.
Yeah, he's water-flavored, for absolutely sure. I never really bothered me until this rewatch.
He's non-fat vanilla frozen dessert.
Dessert. With a Z, because they can't even legally actually call it actual dessert.
Yeah, it can't be yogurt because that would be too spicy. Oh, poor Craig Wasson. So out of this television, well, first off, let's talk about some of the production design in this room because it's fucking awesome. It's equal parts pink and green, and both of them look like somebody threw up on it. There's a sense of concavity to the set where it narrows in the back and widens out into the front to make you feel like you're trapped inside of it. There's a lot of thought going on to how this particular setup is made. Secondly, the pacing is excellent. We know that something is off from the second that Jennifer burns herself with a cigarette. It just feels like, oh, this is going in a bad direction. And then it absolutely does in very quick fashion. And finally, the TV Freddy is kind of a genius, even if it does condemn us to years and years of hearing him call everyone bitch from now on. This particular death is fucking awesome.
I was just going to say, I also think the Welcome to Primetime bitch gets all of the glory, but I actually much prefer the line that comes right before that. This is it, Jennifer, your big break on TV. It's so just dripping with sarcasm and contempt. I just absolutely love the way he reads that. And it also hasn't now been like quoted to death, and the way the Welcome to Primetime bitch has. I just think that one it doesn't get the credit it deserves.
I love everything about the design of it, the weirdly the Tuetsu Iron Man arms that lift her up, how his head emerges from the TV with the rabbit ears attached to them. How they move around as he's talking, like he's my favorite Martian.
Yeah, I noticed that the last time too. It was, I remember as a kid just being absolutely like piss your pants terrified of it. But seeing it now, it's like, that's funny. It's just like, and I think on purpose funny. You don't have Robert Englund with his head coming out of a TV and antenna coming out of his head if you're not trying to be at least a little funny with that gag.
You're playing on the whole warped dream nightmare aesthetic, and that's one of the things that this particular movie rights the ship on. We get back to dreams and nightmares. I am very much looking forward to 4 and 5 and seeing how those dream nightmares stack up as a result. But this is the type of thing that I love this particular franchise for. Also, the image of Jennifer's head stuck inside this elevated TV monitor is very visceral. And once again, how anyone would explain this to a parent of that she took a long running jump and, like she was into the decathlon, just managed to perfectly sink her head into the glass of this TV monitor is asinine. But, what you're going to do, Freddy does not worry about leaving evidence behind. He's not like a Jason who wants to make everything perfect and just so. He just fucks shit up and leaves the remnants for someone else to explain.
Oh my God, maybe that's like one of his powers. He's got like this weird Men in Black mind control thing so that when people see that scene, their brain just shuts off and they believe, with mountains of evidence indicating otherwise, they create some kind of quote unquote rational explanation for why it happened. Like maybe that's one of his powers.
Yeah, I think we're going to see this quite a bit going forward is how people discover dead bodies after this. I think a lot of the time they just cut to funeral. Speaking of which, cut to Evergreen Cemetery in Riverside, California. This is a return for Evergreen Cemetery from part 1. So the Nightmare universe continues to bring that continuity back.
Now, do you think they have a Friday the 13th approach? Like, is she buried with Philip?
Oh, that would be great if they were buried together. Oh my God.
Can we
That's
talk
one
about
of the things I miss.
Can we talk about how Nancy is dressed for this funeral? She looks like a character from a Fellini movie.
She looks like Zorro attending a Broadway play.
I mean, all she's missing is like the cigarette on the holder. And just, talking about, Marcel and his ennui when they were on the Riviera last summer.
I mean, she just pulls this out of a closet for funerals. This is a wild ass outfit. I mean, that hat alone, you have to shop specifically for that hat.
She's kind of like, she shopped from the house of Delia Dietz.
Oh my God. It is so fucking dramatic.
Also incorporated Dick Cavett. So we have a connection.
Done and done. Pulled that thread all the way through. Also, Craig Wasson meets a ghost here, but we'll talk about more of that later. And he's nonplussed about this. Cut to Nancy's candlelit fireplace. Are these two doing it? Who lights candles for dinner after a funeral if blowjobs aren't involved, Gina?
That was a dick move, Patrick.
All I'm saying is I don't light candles for after funeral dinners all the time. But if I'm trying to maybe get somebody in bed, I do. But I don't want these two people to do it.
I don't think that they are yet. I don't think that they managed to, because as we know what happens to poor Nancy in the end. But I mean, they have a couple meaningful looks. Certainly when they separate at the bar, they kind of give each other a little bit of look. I'm like, no, don't you kiss. Don't you fucking kiss. And they heard me, thank God. So no, yeah. I mean, I was more boggling, like, how is she affording this on a graduate student salary?
Yeah, maybe Joyce had a lot of.
I mean, she's got a pretty swank bachelorette pad going on there.
She does. I mean, unlike Neil, the entryway to her kitchen doesn't have swinging cowboy doors. Like, this is a real place.
I mean, it is set for romance. I mean, I would say all she's missing is the Portishead, but Portishead I don't think was a thing when this movie was out.
No,
so maybe
she would have to wait another 6 years.
I don't know, maybe Luther Vandross or something. I don't know. Sade, thank you. There you go. Yes. Perfect.
I mean, they're eating dinner on the ground at a coffee table. That is not something one does with just a colleague. I don't even think I've ever done that with friends. That is a romantic move when you're like, the couch is too formal for us. Let's get down on this coffee table's level.
I think this was another one where like early drafts had some kind of an actual explicit love story to it. And then I guess they realized that wasn't a way to go. But again, this is a production where we're not doing second takes. So we're sure as shit not doing reshoots.
Well, they figured the audience had seen Body Double, and they would think, yes, we insist that Craig Wasson get another sex scene, please. This absolutely must happen. And they for time's sake, they could not do it.
Bring back that Wasson peen, man.
Yeah, they saw it in Ghost Story. They're like, bring back that green screen matte painting peen.
You know what the worst thing is? I have seen exactly 7 seconds of Ghost Story, and it was that.
It's scene. That scene.
Because someone posted that clip onto Twitter, so it's like, oh, it's Craig Wasson, and there's Craig Wasson's penis.
Just flapping in the breeze.
And if I remember correctly, maybe a pencil mustache involved there as well.
Well, if you thought that you couldn't get enough of his raw animal charisma in this, in Ghost Story, brace yourself. Hold on to your hats. He plays two characters in it.
Yes, and you can tell them apart because of the mustache.
So isn't that kind of like putting a goatee on a bowl of tapioca pudding?
It is.
I mean, he is on screen with 4 acting legends, and he is in the movie for sure. I've definitely seen photographic evidence.
He sure is there.
Yeah. Shout out to that sad wood wreath wrapped in white ribbon on the wall. And I am not talking about Craig Wasson. I'm talking about the set decoration.
Can you be sure that wasn't him?
Yes. This scene is useless because all it is Neil talking about his feelings. And you're like, you know what? Nancy lived through all her fucking friends dying in high school. Could we talk about that? Why are we constantly worried about Neil? Neil. Cut back to the group. Slightly less smoky room this time. Nancy reveals to everyone that Freddy's name is Fred Krueger, and that what his MO is in terms of dream manipulation. And this does not strike Craig Wasson as odd or revelatory based on his facial movements. He just accepts the information and continues to think about that cornbread he had last night for dinner. It's like he's been told the weather tomorrow will be partly cloudy. There's just nothing happening there. Meanwhile, she's like, there's a dream demon who's a former serial killer. And if you die in a dream, you die in real life. And he's like, yeah.
When's lunch?
What the bus schedule is. So they decide to do the perfectly rational thing. All go to sleep together all at the same time and have Kristen pull them on into the same dream. And of course it works immediately, but the film kind of fools you into thinking it's not happening. And Joey gets lured into the hallway with the promise of fresh bed sheets, only to be seduced by one nurse Marcy.
So, I just picture a 4-year-old Bryan Christopher watching one of probably his earliest horror movies. And this being not only his introduction to like R-rated horror, but also to a nude woman who then proceeds to like mutate into a burnt child killer. I don't want to say it led to therapy, but it definitely didn't steer me away from therapy.
How did the 4-year-old you think about those super high on the hip panties?
I mean, it was an era where I was also watching Roadhouse, so I just figured that's where all panties sat.
I was going to say, that can't be comfortable for nursing all day.
Oh, no, to walk around, that's the going out panty. That's not a work panty. Also, she's not wearing a bra. I mean, granted, this is the dream version of her, so we really shouldn't cast aspersions. But I think that it's very apt that you bring up Roadhouse, because that's another movie that has just criminal hairstyles. The hairstyles in that film they cannot even be believed, even though they are filmed. And Joey's hair isn't so much of a style, such as an ongoing criminal enterprise. The flip in front should be a warning to others that he's poisonous. That is not a movie hairstyle, ladies and gentlemen. I don't care what era you come from.
And I will say, at least they got rid of the teardrop tattoo.
Oh, that was gone after one scene. That it's
gone after one scene.
Extremely puzzling.
I blame you for the fact that will forever gnaw on my brain, Patrick, because I'd never noticed it before. And now that's all I will ever notice for the rest of my life. That in one 17-second scene, Joey has an eye drop tattoo, and we'll never see that again.
Yeah. It remains a mystery how this debate team gangsta managed to shake somebody in juvie, but what are you going to do? Let's cut back to the group scene for a second, because here they all slowly begin to realize they're actually in a dream once you start to see those balls float around in 2D animation. Not the film's finest special effects moment, but what are you going to do? It's 1986. We get a speech from Will, who basically explains how we know we're in a dream. And he says it thus: "In my dreams, I can walk. My legs are strong. In my dreams, I am the wizard master." And these were words written down and then handed to him and say, "Please say this when the camera is focused on you." And he tried his hardest.
Well, I mean, they are asking him to basically put together a sequences of words that basically add up to 4 + 4 = toilet seat. It's like, yeah, my legs work, and I'm also a wizard.
Now let me make this ball into butterfly. See? Once again, Wasson is inside this collective dream state and is really more, focused on concern trolling Kincaid when he breaks a chair in half. He's a real drip.
It should also be pointed out that he is apparently so bland that he was able to hypnotize himself to sleep.
I was thinking that. It's like he put himself to sleep. Again, I wish I had that capability. I wouldn't have a medicine cabinet full of melatonin and no-dose and sleep dose and other variations of dose. If I could hypnotize myself, if I could just bore myself to sleep, that would make my life so much easier.
But Gina, the trade-off for that is that you need to be Craig Wasson.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah, that is like the real monkey's paw of this. This is, I sold my hair for a comb of it all. We also get Taryn's iconic line of, "In my dreams, I'm beautiful and bad." And she's either smiling from ear to ear in delight, or she's breaking in the middle of it. Either way, it's just kind of fun.
I like it. I mean,
delightful.
even if she's kind of thinking, "Oh, this is so stupid," it's cute. I mean, that's the only time these kids get to be happy is when they're in their their dream personas. Again, like I mentioned in an earlier episode, most of my more mundane dreams, I'm just like going somewhere and realize I don't have any shoes on. So that would be my very useful power to bring to the table in fighting an otherworldly child killer.
You're just walking around so that your feet touch the earth, so that you're connected to it,
Just
like that
gloriously
one,
barefooted.
like Chuck in Friday the 13th Part 3.
Exactly.
Who goes into a fucking outhouse without shoes on, like a goddamn grosso. Ugh, what a movie. So back to Teardrop Joey. Nurse Marcy basically piles on top of him, or at least the very far right-hand half of his body. It's almost like there's a contractual level of his body that she's supposed to cover, but no more. It's very odd for, sort of sex grind. In my dreams, I think this would progress a little bit more, but I guess Freddy's just not that into it, and I can't force him.
He's definitely not willing to get as much into it as, like, say, the tall man in Phantasm, who will have full intercourse with somebody before stabbing them.
Yeah, he loves sex. Here's the thing we don't talk about Tall Man. Tall Man loves sex.
Tall man fucks. Tall man fucks.
Tall man fucks. Freddy, he's teasing you all the fucking time. He's just coaxing a boner out of you, and then he's like, nope, fuck you. Here's my tongue. So let's talk about two interesting microtrends that we have now discovered inside of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. After 3 movies, that's when it begins to develop, because once is a fluke, twice is, coincidence, third time, someone's trying to tell you something, and we get a couple of them here. The first is Freddy tongue. He literally he gives someone a tongue lashing and ties Joey to this bed with remnants of his tongue. So Freddy tongue is a real thing in this movie. We're given it in the first movie with I'm Your Boyfriend Now. In the second movie, it's in between Meryl's ample chest as Jesse clings desperately to heterosexuality and fails, but then gets right back on that horse, that fuck horse, if you will. And here we get it again as it lashes Joey to the bed. Freddy tongue. We need a hashtag for it. I'm not sure what it is, but that's a thing, y'all.
And it's also really strong and holds up well, because something I noticed about in this watching, several days go by, or at least a good day before they go back in to get Joey. He is still tied above that Temple of Doom fire pit by those tongues. So he's been just like camped out there for a good 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah, I guess Freddy tongue has some sort of pacifying agent where Joey slips into a coma as a result of this. I'm not really sure how that works. I don't work in dreams, so maybe some scientist can tell me about it. I don't really get it, but that's okay. I don't have to get everything. The second trend, let's call it the Joyce treatment. We may have our very own extension of hashtag get bunked happening in the Nightmare on Elm Street series. Instead of being killed through a bed or other solid surface, people merely melt into their beds in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise and mostly die.
It's not until the next movie, but spoiler, Joey again meets his final demise in a bed.
Yes.
While being cock teased by a naked chick again.
And also tying back to that deep sense of denial, because when his mom sees it, she's freaked out, but no one questions how he managed to somehow phase through, I guess, through osmosis into the waterbed. But I don't want to, that's where a movie ahead. I don't want to get too far into that.
I mean, people in this town are very accepting of bed-related phantasm deaths. We saw it in the first one. We saw some evidence of bed-related hijinks in part 2, not as supernatural as this. But holy hell, there's a bed thing happening. People in Nightmare on Elm Street are getting their own version of Bunked, and it's exciting to me. So the group space manages to then transform into a giant boiler room. Various people try to get out, but it's too hot in there for them to do it. And then when Dr. Sims walks in, very nonplussed, that there's a bevy of smoke in the room, but I guess they're all used to that because someone's constantly smoking. Or once again, Cheech and Chong are in the corner. She finds Joey on the floor and yells out, "Code Blue!" And then Craig, Wasson, and Nancy are let go from their jobs because obviously if you hypnotize people into falling asleep and one of them goes into a coma, it's totally your fault somehow.
Well, I mean,
before we get too into that, I do want to back up just a little bit back to the Nightmare on Elm Street version of the Star Wars trash compactor.
Uh-huh.
Did either of you happen to notice that when it was coming in, is it Tara or Taryn? The bad one.
Taryn.
Yes, Taryn.
Taryn tried to stab the wall with her switchblade.
I did not
like
that.
She went full Sir Lancelot from Holy Grail when he's like literally attacking the castle. She takes at least 2 swipes at this wall when it's coming in at her.
Yeah, she does stand knife already in both hands to stab this red hot iron wall. I mean, it's the weapon she has available to her, so there's that. But it also, in terms of being a trash compactor, it's very weird that it, instead of closing in from either side, it's just sort of bends in. Mm-hmm. like you're trying to fold cardboard in half, but you haven't gotten to that crease quite yet. So it's more a concavity than anything else.
By the way, I like how I managed to reference both Monty Python and Star Wars in a horror podcast. So you're all welcome for that.
Congratulations. You can check that off your list if you have a bingo card. And so, yeah, Craig and Nancy are tossed from the department because they talked to kids in a room and they all fell asleep. And that's the golden rule. You can't do that if you're a doctor, I guess. Craig Wasson takes this news with his usual combination of, "I have my white toast dry, thank you," and waiting until the other actor stops speaking to deliver his lines. And this results in him heading out to his car to put all his files away, including one photo that I tweeted out earlier. That's him, Philip, and Jennifer, and he's holding on to a juice box. And it looks like the most boring fucking picnic that has ever been boring.
Well, I think Philip is trying to do the whole hello banana phone thing. It looks like he's kind of going for that thing a little bit, but we miss you, Philip.
I'll take any Philip I can get. So hello banana phone still pops off the screen. Meanwhile, Craig spies Ghost Nun on the top of the bell tower and takes off after her in the most stumbling manner ever committed to film. It's like he's dancing around a landmine of dog poop. Do I need to describe Wasson using a rock to open a lock? No, you pretty much get it. It's just as boring as you might think it is. And then we get a whole lot of Ghost Nun backstory. How to describe this? Young women should not be working in wards of the criminally insane by their lonesome. I'm just going to come out and say this. This goes for men, women, anyone in between. Literally, that's a buddy system sort of gig.
Well, isn't that kind of
you should pair up?
Really, though, isn't that really a trope in horror movies that goes with that explanation? This is the chronically understaffed hospitals and psych wards. I believe I would like to take you back to the remake of Black Christmas, when it appeared that the entire hospital had taken a holiday off.
Very, very true. And if not, they're just so horned up from it being Christmas that they're very busy boning.
I mean, even in kind of more highbrow horror, like say Exorcist 3, like that. I mean that whole scene, probably the best jump scene in horror besides Alien.
Yeah.
It doesn't work unless unless the fact that how is this nurse the only staff member just wandering around this floor? I mean, yeah, I realize that the tension is someone does come in and then they go out and then she's there by herself. But I mean, I don't know if either of you have spent a lot of time in hospitals. Without getting too much of a bummer, I have, and there are constantly people in them. Always. If there's a reason why a mass murder has never taken place in a hospital, as even despite it being a very common place in horror movies, it's because there are at least 6 people at the nurse's station, people going in and out of the nurse's offices. It's one of those horror movie tropes that has never borne itself out in real life. And I realize, and it's for dramatic effect, but sometimes you have to think, try something different.
But we learned from her that it turns out that Freddy Krueger is, quote unquote, the bastard son of 100 maniacs, as this poor young woman was kidnapped by this ward of criminally insane ne'er-do-wells and repeatedly assaulted over the period of many days over a holiday. And when she was found, she was barely cognizant of what had occurred. And it's really kind of a gross and rapey storyline that I don't know is this trying to make it so that Freddy's acceptable? Like, it's okay that you like him because I don't 20 plus.
No, I don't think he's supposed to be it's supposed to make you sympathize with him. I think it's just, let's come up, other than, having him be born of the devil himself, let's come up with the most horrifying backstory we could think of for him.
It's also a bit of like, that's not how reproduction works.
No. All it takes is one, folks.
Yeah.
All it takes is one maniac.
And there's a bit of kind of a eugenics thing here, like trying to say that because there was so much crazy that it created just deep in the DNA, like he was always going to be evil. And it's like, that's also not how reproduction works.
Yeah.
Well, as the movies go on, they keep fine tuning and retconning and messing around with the Freddy background story to the series' detriment. I have found.
Yeah, it does not wear well. The more we know about this person, the one thing I truly appreciate about the Friday the 13th series is that it takes until part 9 before someone's like, oh no, this family has a long family history. I mean, look at the old Voorhees Manor with this sex chair and Necronomicon. Like, this is unnecessary.
Yeah, because it ends up sounding so much like someone just pulled it out of their ass. And
sit back, it's time for a shave.
Exactly.
And it also does not help that the lady playing this nun, an actress by the name of Nan Martin, looks like she's reading her lines off of cue cards just over Craig Wasson's shoulder. She cannot.
Well, they actually probably could have written them directly onto Craig Wasson.
That's true. I mean, he's
right on his
forehead.
Right on his forehead.
Yeah, it would not have affected his performance in the least, and would have helped her. And I think it's sad that he could not help out a fellow actor. But we all have to do what we do. But that pretty much rounds it up for this section of the movie. We've reached the 1 hour mark, and so we must say adieu. But before we go, of course, we have to do a bit of business, and that starts with Choose Your Own Death Venture, a brief return of an old favorite. If you had to die in the manner in which one of the people in this film does, which would you choose and why? Here are your choices. You can have your face thrust into a television set, or you can be slashed to death on the set of a television talk show. So, Bryan, as our guest, I turn to you first and demand your answer.
Oh, well, I think if this episode is any indication, you can see that I'm rather vain and narcissistic. So I think the opportunity to be on a talk show for my last minutes would be something I would probably jump at, rather than watching TV. So I think I would have to go with getting slashed in the face a la Zsa Zsa Gabor.
Okay, but as part of that, Dick Cavett is going to make you look like kind of an asshole.
Maybe I kind of deserve it.
There you go. Someone who accepts their fate 100%. I like this. Gina, what say you?
Oh, I obviously even when I watched this movie the first time around, all I could think was, yeah, that's how I would go. Is he facing the television, simply because of how much television I watched when I was a teenager. It just made sense to me that was going to ultimately be my demise.
I like it. I also have to go with facing the television. It's just too cool. And I would assume that I would bleed out rather quickly if I wasn't already electrocuted. I just think it's a fast and baffling way to go, and would leave my family with a great deal of questions about how I was able to do it and all of that. And I mean, what better way could you possibly have to go out? And so there you have it. Before we go, of course, Bryan, where can people find you on these here internets to find out more about what you do?
I am excessively on Twitter at Evil Taylor Hicks. And that's pretty much where you can find what I've been writing about, either for Daily Dead or for Room Org, or just the random shit that pops into my head throughout the day.
Excellent. Do it today, people. Gina, how about yous?
I write about old television and pop culture at my own website, GinaRadcliffe.com. I am also a writer on The Spool. Some recent reviews I've done are the Who Gives a Shit Ted Bundy movie and Charlie Says, which was actually kind of decent, not bad. I'm really already burned out on Charles Manson stuff, but if you must watch one, do tide yourself over until the Quentin Tarantino movie comes out. This is not a bad one, I have to say. And I too am extremely on Twitter under Porcelain72.
Do it today, people. Check it out. Of course, if you want to interact with us, there are several ways to do it. The first being on Twitter at KillByKillPod. Join the conversation on our Facebook group or page. That's a great way to interact with us. And of course, Instagram at KillByKillPodcast. And I've really kept up with the high volume of work that I have going on now. I'm really great at updating Instagram. And by great, I mean terrible. Hey, you know what? You can also do us a solid. You can give us a review on iTunes or wherever you find our podcast. It's a great way to help us reach more people, and you'd be doing us a solid. Like Creepy Kev's Art, who writes great podcasts, hilarious commentary. My favorite kill in the Nightmare/Freddy franchises is Crispin Glover's character in the final chapter, because Jason will always help you find a corkscrew. It's true. He's helpful around a kitchen, especially if you want to get rid of that window. Very helpful with that. He hates obstructed views. And before we go any further, we did receive an email, Gina, that I wanted to let people know about. We received it from a gentleman by the name of Glenn Davies. He's out in Scotland, and he managed to find us on Spotify. It's our first Spotify find, at least that we know of. He searched Friday the 13th music, and he managed to find our podcast. And he was saying that he loves the show and that he kind of grew up as an 80s, 90s kid, loving all things Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Halloween. And he still has all of the VHS tapes and DVDs. And he's just so happened to come across our podcast there. And now he's hooked. I'm a truck driver and spend long hours driving about the countryside and download a shit ton of your episodes every weekend before I go off to listen to it in the truck. And so far, I followed you through the Friday the 13th franchise 1 through 7 and decided to take a break, and now am following you on Nightmare on Elm Street. And I think that's a coy way of saying I don't want to listen to Jason in Hell. But there's great episodes in Jason in Hell, folks. Don't be dismayed by our sour altitude. There are so many wonderful guests there, especially. And he's now working his way through all of the movies again and says, keep up the great work. Please keep making me laugh. All the best from Bonnie, Scotland. So there you go. Thank you, Glenn, for reaching out to us. I'm so glad we are connected in Scotland, and we have one roving trucker out and about listening to us rant and rave.
Just our voices just carrying over the Lee to lovely, my dulcet tones just echoing.
And so, Gina, before we go, what's happening on the Patreon front?
We're back, baby. We have 3 new patrons.
All right.
We have Paul. We have Jen McAllister. We have Megan. I'm going to pronounce your last name wrong. Thewes, Thewes. And I also wanted to give a special thanks to Yuha, who was already a patron, but Yuha raised his donation to $10 a month. So be more like Yuha. If you do that, you will get a choice. You will get the opportunity to pick a movie for us to be put in a drawing to pick a movie for us to review for a Patreon exclusive episode. That was our last Patreon episode, which was Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, a occasionally baffling movie that we had a lot of fun talking about.
Yes, I mean, if you want to hear us talk on and on and on about a guy fucking a tub of ice with a chainsaw, we do that throughout the show in a great length.
If you want to, you definitely get on board if you want to hear us talking even more off script than we already do on this show.
Yes, lots of fun things, and we've got a lot of fun things planned, including next month, The Threat of Motel Hell, one of Gina's absolute favorite films on Earth, and yet another movie with a chainsaw duel in it. We're really ripping up the chainsaws. It's going to get even worse with chainsaws if what's happening after this movie comes to fruition. But that's neither here nor there. That's for a later time. Thank you ever so much to all of our listeners. No matter how you support, if it's just downloading us or blasting us on your social media feed or you're a Patreon supporter, we duly appreciate it. We cannot thank you enough. And so until next time, don't worry, folks. The body count will continue. So for myself and Bryan and for Gina, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Kill by Kill is produced by We Write Good and is intended for entertainment purposes only. A Nightmare on Elm Street is owned by New Line Cinema. No infringement is intended. Kill by Kill's logos were created by Josh Hollis. Visit him at joshhollis.com. The Kill by Kill theme was created exclusively for us by Revenge Body. Get the whole track and much, much more at revengebodymemphis.bandcamp.com today.